The human scout ship glided through the violet sky of Viera. Its metal hull shone under the light of twin suns, and the engines hummed softly, vibrating through the cabin. Milo, a human soldier, sat in the cockpit, watching the alien world unfold below. He had traveled to many planets before, but Viera was different. Its forests glowed faintly at night, rivers shimmered like liquid glass, and mountains rose in sharp, strange shapes. Everything felt alive in a way that made the hair on his arms stand on end. The mission was simple but delicate. Humans wanted to establish peaceful contact with the Avari, the native species of Viera. The Avari were known for their beauty and intelligence, but they were cautious. They could sense emotions in ways humans could not. One wrong move, and the encounter could turn hostile. Milo felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He was not only a soldier, he was an ambassador. The ship touched down in a clearing surrounded by tall, crystalline trees. Their branches stretched high into the sky, reflecting light in colors Milo could not name. The air smelled sweet and fresh, like flowers and rain mixed together. Milo opened the cockpit door and stepped outside. His boots sank slightly into the soft ground, and he could hear the faint rustling of leaves and the distant calls of creatures he had never seen. "Stay alert," he said to the small team behind him. His team was made up of other humans trained in diplomacy and survival. They carried light equipment and scanners to detect life forms. The forest was quiet at first, almost too quiet. Milo's instincts told him that the silence was unusual. Then he heard it. A cry. High-pitched, urgent, and full of fear. It pierced the air and echoed through the trees. Milo froze. The sound was coming from the forest, and it was not like any animal he had ever heard. It was a cry of distress, of pure panic, and it made his heart tighten. He moved forward, signaling his team to follow. They pushed through the glowing undergrowth, careful not to damage the strange plants. Each step revealed more of the forest's mysteries. Flowers that pulsed gently with light, small creatures that hopped and shimmered like living jewels, and vines that seemed to move when he looked at them. But Milo's attention was on the sound. The cry grew louder. Milo could see movement up ahead, a figure struggling in a clearing. As he approached, he realized it was not alone. A creature, taller than any human, with skin that shimmered like silver and patterns that glowed faintly, held a small infant in its arms. The infant was trembling and crying, tiny arms reaching out as if searching for comfort. The adult creature turned its head. Its eyes were wide with panic, and Milo could feel the fear radiating from it. The mother, he assumed it was a mother, was trying to soothe the child, but nothing worked. She spoke in a language that was musical, rising and falling like a song. The sound was beautiful but did not calm the infant. Milo stepped carefully into the clearing. He raised his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. The mother froze, her glowing patterns flickering rapidly. The child's cries grew louder, piercing the quiet of the forest. Milo could feel tension in the air, the forest itself seeming to hold its breath. "Easy," Milo said softly. His voice was calm, steady. He lowered himself to sit on the soft ground, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. He remembered his training. Animals, even alien ones, often responded to calm presence and gentle gestures. The mother watched him, her eyes shifting between suspicion and desperation. Milo reached into his pack and took out a small, glowing sphere used for light and soft vibrations. He rolled it gently on the ground near the infant. The child paused, its crying slowing just slightly. Milo smiled gently. This was a start. He began to hum, a simple tune from Earth. The vibration of his voice seemed to catch the child's attention. The mother's glowing patterns shifted, as if she was trying to understand what Milo was doing. Slowly, Milo extended a hand, palm open, toward the infant. The child's tiny eyes focused on him, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. The mother stepped back slightly, giving Milo space. She did not move away completely but allowed him to interact with the child. Milo moved slowly, matching the rhythm of the infant's cries with his hand movements. He noticed that when he mimicked the baby's small gestures, the cries softened. Each tiny movement of Milo's hands seemed to build trust. Minutes passed, though it felt longer. The forest remained still, watching silently. Milo continued his gentle gestures and humming. He could feel the mother's tension easing slightly. The infant looked at him with wide, curious eyes, no longer crying in panic. The glow in the mother's skin became softer, more even, like a slow, steady heartbeat. Milo spoke again, softly, using words the mother could not understand but with tone and calm that mattered more than language. Slowly, carefully, he reached out a finger. The child hesitated, then touched it with one tiny hand. Milo smiled, his heart lifting with relief. The mother exhaled, a sound like wind through leaves. She lowered her child slightly, allowing Milo to touch it gently. For the first time, she relaxed, her glowing patterns pulsing in a steady rhythm. Milo could feel a connection forming, fragile but real. Behind him, his team watched silently. They knew they were witnessing a historic moment. This was the beginning of understanding, a bridge between human and Avarit. Milo realized that sometimes heroism was not about weapons or strength. Sometimes it was about patience, empathy, and the courage to step into a moment of fear and still act with care. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. Milo sat there with the infant in his lap, the mother nearby, watching and learning. The forest around them seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Milo knew this was only the start. There were many challenges ahead, but for this moment, peace had arrived. Milo looked at the mother and child. He thought of Earth and all the worlds humans had yet to meet. Perhaps one day, humans and aliens could understand each other fully. Perhaps one day, fear and misunderstanding could be replaced with trust and friendship. For now, he was content to sit quietly, letting the infant rest in his arms and the mother stand close, knowing that sometimes the smallest acts of care could change the future of an entire world. The night on Viera was quiet but alive. The glow of the plants cast soft light across the forest floor, creating shadows that seemed to move on their own. Milo still held the infant in his arms, feeling the tiny heartbeat beneath his hands. The child had calmed for a moment, but Milo could tell that the fear had not completely left. The infant's eyes darted at every movement, ears flicking at every distant sound. The Avara mother, Sarah, knelt nearby, her glowing skin dim and calm now, but her worry was still clear. She spoke softly, using musical sounds that Milo could not understand, but he noticed the tone was gentle, almost like a lullaby. Milo realized the mother was trying to communicate, to reassure her child, but the fear in the infant was strong. Milo's team stayed close, scanning the area for any danger. They had seen small creatures flitting through the trees, but nothing threatening so far. Yet Milo could feel that the forest itself was aware of the infant's fear. Even the normally glowing flowers seemed to pulse faster, as if reacting to the baby's energy. "Keep your movements slow," Milo said quietly to his team. "We don't want to startle it again." He turned back to the child, who had begun to cry softly again. The sound was not as loud as before, but it was still high-pitched and urgent. Milo set the infant gently on his lap and began to hum again, the low vibrations meant to calm the small body. The child paused, tilting its head as if listening, but the fear did not leave completely. Milo realized he needed to understand what frightened the infant. He observed carefully. The baby flinched at sudden noises, bright lights, and fast movements. But Milo noticed something else. The infant's eyes followed patterns, colors, and gentle motions. When Milo moved slowly and let light reflect off his visor, the child's breathing steadied slightly. Milo smiled, realizing that understanding the baby's senses was the key to helping it. Sarah watched silently, her glowing skin shifting through soft colors of blue and green. She stepped closer, and Milo extended a hand for her to place her small luminescent fingers near the infant. The child reached toward her, letting her touch it. Milo noticed that the connection between mother and child began to soothe both of them. But peace did not last long. From the distance, a low growl echoed through the forest. It was a sound that made Milo's instincts tingle. He stood carefully, keeping the infant close. The growl was followed by several others, moving closer. Shadows danced among the trees, and Milo realized they were not alone. "Predators," Milo whispered. He motioned for his team to prepare. These creatures were known to hunt anything that made sudden noises. The infant's earlier cries had likely drawn attention. Milo's heart pounded. He could not let the average child become a target. Sarah's glowing patterns flickered rapidly, signaling panic. She stepped in front of Milo instinctively, shielding her child as best she could. Milo put a hand on her shoulder. "I will protect you," he said gently. "Stay calm." The creatures emerged from the trees. They were large, with thick skin that reflected the forest's glow and sharp claws that clicked against the ground. Their eyes were bright and intelligent, tracking movement. Milo stood firmly, his posture strong but non-threatening. He knew that sudden attacks could trigger the child's fear, making the situation worse. Milo scanned the forest floor for anything he could use. There were thick vines nearby, some glowing faintly. He grabbed one, using it to create a barrier between the predators and the infant. Then he activated a small device on his wrist, sending a low-frequency vibration that created a shimmering wall of light. The predators stopped, confused by the unusual sight. The infant cried again, but Milo kept his voice calm. "It's okay. You are safe," he said softly. Sarah leaned closer, her musical tones blending with Milo's words, and the baby's cries lessened. The predators hesitated, unsure if the creatures in front of them were a threat. Milo's team flanked the area, ready to intervene if the creatures charged. Milo realized that the child responded to the combination of calm voice, gentle touch, and light. He focused all his attention on keeping these elements steady. Slowly, the predators began to retreat, not used to humans and their strange technology. The forest returned to its soft glow, the tension easing. Sarah let out a soft exhale, almost like a sigh of relief. The infant rested against her, its small hands curling around her glowing fingers. Milo smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. In that moment, he understood something important: courage was not just about fighting. It was about patience, understanding, and keeping calm when everything around you was chaos. The predators vanished into the darkness, leaving the forest peaceful again. Milo sat down carefully, holding the infant as Sarah adjusted her position beside him. She reached out, touching Milo's hand briefly, a gesture of trust and gratitude. The child looked up at him with wide, curious eyes, no longer frightened. "Good job, Milo," one of his team members whispered. They had watched closely and knew that Milo had done something extraordinary. Not a single weapon had been fired, yet they had protected the child and the mother. Milo's thoughts turned to the mission. Humans were often seen as strong, capable fighters, but here he realized they could also be friends, protectors, and teachers. This small act of care could change how the Avara viewed humans forever. He felt proud, but also humble, knowing the forest and its creatures had tested him in ways no training could fully prepare him for. Sura's glowing patterns shifted through warm colors, signaling calm and acceptance. Milo mirrored the gestures slowly with his hands, matching the rhythm, and the infant reached out once more, touching his fingers gently. The connection between human and Avara was forming, fragile but real. Night deepened on Viera, and Milo could see the twin moons rising above the crystalline trees. The forest glowed in silver and blue light, peaceful again, but Milo knew that danger could return at any moment. He also knew that this small victory had changed something fundamental. The infant had begun to trust a human, and the mother had begun to trust him. "Tomorrow, we will continue," Milo said softly, speaking more to himself than anyone else. He knew the next steps would require patience, learning, and care. The connection with the Avara could grow stronger if he approached it with respect and understanding. For now, he allowed himself a moment of relief. The infant rested in his arms, breathing slowly and calmly. Sura stayed nearby, watching, her glowing skin like a gentle light in the night. Milo realized that on this strange world, humans could bring hope, calm, and friendship in ways stronger than any weapon. The forest settled into quiet once more, filled with soft sounds of life. Milo looked around and felt a deep sense of purpose. This was more than a mission. It was a beginning, a chance for humans and Avara to understand each other, to build trust where fear had once ruled. Milo tightened his hold on the infant gently, feeling the small heartbeat against his chest. He knew this night would be remembered, not for danger, but for the moment a human soldier and an alien child met without fear, and for the quiet promise of friendship that had begun in the glowing forests of Viera. The sun rose slowly over the alien forest, casting long shadows on the glowing ground. Milo had spent the night sitting near the Avara mother, Sura, keeping the infant calm. Even though the forest seemed peaceful, Milo knew that Viera was unpredictable. Every creature, every movement could be a test. But the calm from last night had not vanished entirely. The infant slept now, small chest rising and falling, while Sura's glowing patterns shifted slowly in soft blues and greens, showing her steady mood. Milo stood carefully, adjusting his uniform and scanning the surroundings. The forest was alive in a way he had never experienced. Flowers that glowed faintly in the dark now reflected sunlight, revealing colors he had never seen before. Small creatures moved among the branches, hopping silently, and the air smelled sweet with a hint of spice. Milo's team quietly unpacked supplies nearby, preparing for the day ahead. They had food, medical tools, and devices to record interactions with the Avara. But Milo knew that nothing in their equipment would replace patience and empathy. He returned his attention to Sura and the infant. The child stirred, blinking its wide, reflective eyes, and reached for the mother. Milo knelt carefully on the soft ground, keeping his movements slow. He wanted to show he meant no harm. The infant looked at him, curiosity shining through fear, and Milo held out his hand gently. The child hesitated, then touched his fingers softly, exploring the human in front of it. Milo felt a small thrill of relief. This was progress. Sura tilted her head slightly, her glowing skin shifting through calming shades. She spoke softly in musical tones, her words flowing like a river. Milo could not understand the language, but he realized it was not necessary. He watched her gestures, the rhythm of her voice, and the way her fingers moved near the child. Slowly, Milo began to mimic the patterns, using his hands to make gentle, curved motions that matched Sara's movements. The infant paused, blinking at Milo's hands, then let out a soft coo. It was the first sound that seemed like curiosity rather than fear. Milo smiled gently and continued, moving slowly and predictably, keeping the infant's attention. The connection was delicate, fragile, but Milo could feel it forming. For several hours, Milo stayed with them. He watched every movement of the infant, noticing patterns in its behavior. When it pulled its small hands away, he waited. When it made soft sounds, he mimicked the pitch and rhythm. Slowly, the child began to respond, making small coos and reaching out toward Milo. Sara's glowing skin shifted in brighter, warmer tones, signaling approval. Milo realized that communication was not just about words. It was about attention, patience, and understanding the subtle signals of another being. The infant's eyes followed his every movement, and Milo learned to move with care, letting the baby set the pace. The trust was growing, small but real, like the first leaves of spring pushing through the soil. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the nearby trees. Milo froze, holding the infant gently. Sara's glowing patterns shifted quickly, showing alarm. Milo scanned the forest. It was not the predators from the night before, but smaller creatures, curious and cautious, approaching the clearing. They paused at the edge, observing the interaction. Milo smiled softly. The forest itself seemed to be watching. He realized that his actions mattered not just to the Avaria, but to the world around them. Every gentle gesture, every calm movement, was part of a larger harmony. The infant reached toward one of the glowing creatures, and Milo guided its hand slowly, letting it explore without fear. Sara watched closely, her eyes wide, her skin glowing in muted colors. By mid-morning, Milo had established a simple routine. He and the infant would interact through gentle gestures, coos, and soft humming, while Sara observed and joined in at times. The bond was growing, and Milo could see the relief and trust in Sara's eyes. He knew that this first contact was not just about calming a child. It was about building trust between species, showing that humans could be allies, friends, and protectors. During a break, Milo spoke softly to Sara, using slow gestures and pointing to himself, then to her, then to the child. He mimicked the musical tones she had used the night before. Slowly, Sara responded, mirroring his gestures and blending her tones with his attempts. The child watched carefully, cooing softly, reaching for both of them. It was a moment of shared understanding, fragile but beautiful. The team observed quietly, recording data and taking notes. They knew that Milo's approach was untested. No human had yet calmed an average child like this. But Milo knew that trust could not be forced. It had to grow naturally. He smiled at the thought that humans, often seen as aggressive and strong, could also bring care, patience, and calm to a world that had never known them. As the day went on, Milo noticed something important. The infant responded not just to touch and sound, but also to patterns of light. The subtle glow of Sara's skin, the reflections from Milo's visor, even the soft pulses from the plants nearby, all of it seemed to matter. Milo adjusted his approach, moving in harmony with the forest and the mother. The infant began to imitate simple movements, reaching out and curling its tiny fingers around Milo's hand. Sarah's glow shifted to warmer shades, and she stepped closer, placing her hand near the infant. Milo let her take a part in the interaction, guiding gently. The child now looked at both of them with curiosity and comfort, a remarkable change from the fear it had shown the night before. But Milo knew that trust was delicate. A sudden movement, a loud sound, or an unexpected event could undo hours of progress. He stayed alert, aware of every rustle, every shadow. The forest was beautiful, but it was also alive with creatures that were unpredictable. Milo's training as a soldier told him to stay ready, but his heart reminded him that this was not a battlefield. This was a place of learning, of care, and of connection. By evening, Milo felt a quiet pride. The infant slept in Sarah's arms, calm and safe. The mother's glowing patterns reflected peace and trust. Milo stood, stretching his tired muscles, and looked around the forest. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky painted in soft violet and gold. The trees pulsed with gentle light, and small creatures returned to the branches. Milo realized that this day had been more than a success. It had been a first step toward understanding, a first bridge between human and Avarit. He felt a deep sense of purpose. Humans could bring more than strength and technology to the stars. They could bring patience, care, and a willingness to understand. Sarah looked at him, her eyes reflecting soft trust, and the infant reached toward Milo one last time before closing its eyes. He held out a finger, letting the tiny hand curl around it. Milo smiled gently, feeling the warmth of this fragile connection. Tomorrow, he would continue. Tomorrow, he would deepen this trust and learn more about the Avarit way of life. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The cry that had pierced the forest hours before had been replaced by calm and understanding. Milo knew the journey ahead would have challenges, but he also knew that he had learned an important lesson: courage was not always about fighting, and strength was not always about weapons. Sometimes, the bravest act was to sit quietly, understand another being, and offer comfort when fear ruled the moment. And so, in the glowing forest of Viera, Milo, Sarah, and the small child shared a moment of peace. It was the beginning of trust, the start of friendship, and the first step toward a future where humans and Avarit could meet not as strangers, but as allies. The next morning on Viera was bright and warm. Golden sunlight filtered through the towering crystal trees, casting colors across the forest floor. Milo woke to find the infant resting peacefully in Sarah's arms. The mother's glowing patterns shifted slowly, gentle waves of soft green and blue, showing calm and comfort. Milo felt a quiet smile spread across his face. The connection he had begun yesterday was still alive. Milo carefully stepped out of his temporary shelter and stretched, feeling the soft ground beneath his boots. The forest was alive with sound now. Birds with shimmering feathers called to each other, small creatures hopped along the branches, and the glowing plants swayed slightly as if greeting the new day. Milo's team prepared to explore nearby, but Milo's attention stayed on Sarah and the infant. He knew that today, more than ever, patience would be key. The infant stirred and reached for him. Milo knelt slowly, letting the child grasp his finger with tiny hands. Sarah watched quietly, her glowing skin reflecting trust. Milo spoke softly, humming a calm tune, and the infant responded with tiny coos. He realized that this child was learning that humans could be gentle and caring, and that trust was growing between them. Sarah began to move slowly, showing Milo simple gestures. She pointed to a small glowing plant, then to herself, then to the child. Milo followed her movements, mimicking them with careful gestures and soft sounds. The child's eyes followed Milo's hands, and it reached toward him, then toward Sarah. Milo smiled. This small interaction was more than play, it was communication. Slowly, the child was learning patterns and responses, while Milo was learning how the Avarit expressed care and attention. Hours passed, and Milo and Sarah continued their quiet interactions. Milo learned that the Avarit's glowing patterns were more than decoration. They showed emotions, responses, and even subtle instructions. When the child reached for an object, Sarah's skin would pulse slightly, guiding it without words. Milo mimicked the pulses with hand movements, creating a bridge between human and Avarit gestures. The forest seemed to respond. Small creatures that had watched from the branches before now moved closer, curious but unafraid. The light from the plants pulsed softly, reflecting the calm energy Milo and Sarah projected. The infant giggled quietly, a sound like soft wind, reaching for a leaf that shimmered with light. Milo guided its tiny hands gently, letting it explore without fear. At midday, Milo sat with the infant in his lap, letting it rest. Sarah remained close, watching, her glowing patterns warm and steady. Milo noticed that the child would respond to both of them equally, reaching out for Milo's hands and Sarah's, learning trust and care from both. This small connection was extraordinary. It showed that even across species, understanding could be built through patience and empathy. Suddenly, a faint rustling came from the forest edge. Milo stiffened. The trees around them seemed taller, darker, and the shadows moved strangely. The team had noticed nothing, but Milo's instincts told him that something was approaching. The infant stirred, sensing the change in the air. Sarah's glow shifted slightly, signaling alertness. Milo carefully placed the child back in Sarah's arms. He rose slowly, scanning the forest. There were creatures nearby smaller than the predators from the previous night, but still unfamiliar and potentially dangerous. Milo kept his movements calm, using slow gestures to signal to Sarah that they were not in immediate danger, but vigilance was necessary. The creatures emerged, 4 quadrupeds with shiny skin and sharp claws. They stopped a few meters away, observing the group. Milo raised his hands slowly, showing he did not mean harm. The creatures tilted their heads, sniffing the air. The infant looked at them curiously but stayed in Sarah's arms, protected by her calm presence and Milo's steady posture. Milo knew that fear could undo the trust he had built. He focused on remaining calm and using his body language to convey safety. Sarah mirrored his calm movements, and the infant's breathing slowed. The creatures, sensing no threat, eventually turned and disappeared back into the forest. Milo exhaled quietly, realizing how delicate the balance of trust was on Viera. The rest of the day passed with careful interaction. Milo learned more about the infant's preferences, what motions made it comfortable, and how Sarah guided it through simple gestures. Milo began to mimic the glowing patterns with small, soft movements of his hands, creating a rhythm that the child seemed to understand. The infant reached toward him, touching his fingers lightly, then back to Sarah, learning to trust both human and mother equally. By evening, the bond between Milo, Sarah, and the child was strong but fragile. The child was calm, curious, and playful, no longer afraid of Milo. Sarah's glowing patterns showed warmth and gratitude, signaling that she trusted him more than she had before. Milo understood that this trust was earned through attention, care, and patience. Weapons and strength could not have created this connection. Milo took a moment to reflect. Humans were often seen as aggressive in the galaxy, but here on Viera, he had shown that they could also bring calm, understanding, and friendship. This small success was a reminder that heroism came in many forms, sometimes through gestures, patience, and quiet attention rather than force. The team prepared a small meal nearby. Milo stayed close to Sarah and the infant, letting the child explore while remaining calm. The infant reached toward small objects, learning shapes and textures, while Milo guided it gently. Sarah's glowing patterns shifted in soft tones, praising the child and signaling calm to Milo. The three of them, human, mother, and infant, had created a shared rhythm, a small family in the middle of an alien forest. As night fell, Milo helped Sarah and the infant back to their resting area. The forest glowed faintly in the moonlight, and the air was filled with the soft sounds of nocturnal creatures. Milo felt a deep sense of purpose and pride. This was only the beginning, but he had learned that humans could bring empathy, patience, and care to worlds beyond their own. Sarah's glowing skin shifted through soft patterns as she held her child close. Milo knelt beside them, speaking softly and humming a gentle tune. The child responded, cooing and curling its tiny hands around Milo's fingers. The bond between them had grown stronger, showing that understanding could cross the boundaries of species. Milo knew that the challenges were far from over. The forest could hold dangers at any moment, and he still had much to learn about the Avarit and their world. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. He had helped a child, earned the trust of a mother, and discovered that humans could make a difference not just with strength, but with care, patience, and understanding. And so, under the glowing canopy of Viera, Milo, Sarah, and the infant shared a moment of calm and connection. It was a small victory, but an important one. Trust had been built, fear had been eased, and the first step toward friendship between human and Avari had been taken. The next morning, the forest of Viera was filled with golden light. Milo woke to the soft coos of the infant resting in Sarah's arms. Everything seemed peaceful, but Milo knew better. The forest had an energy that could change in an instant. Every rustle, every shadow, could carry danger. Milo had learned to trust his instincts. He felt a tension in the air that morning, a subtle vibration that told him the forest was aware of their presence. Sarah's glowing skin reflected calm at first, but Milo noticed small flickers of caution. The infant stirred, sensing the shift. Milo carefully placed the child in Sarah's arms and stood, scanning the area. The glowing plants and crystal trees seemed unchanged, but Milo's eyes caught movement among the distant branches. Something was approaching. "Everyone, stay alert," Milo whispered to his team. His voice was calm, but there was urgency behind it. The team moved quietly, positioning themselves around the clearing. They had weapons, but Milo did not want to use them unless absolutely necessary. The infant's safety was more important than anything else. From the shadows emerged a pack of creatures. They were large and powerful, with thick, scaled hides that shimmered in the sunlight. Sharp claws dug into the ground as they moved. Their eyes glowed with intelligence, and their teeth were visible in low snarls. Milo recognized them immediately from reports the predators of Viera. They were curious, dangerous, and drawn to the sounds of life. The infant stirred nervously, sensing the tension. Sarah's glowing patterns shifted rapidly, signaling alarm. Milo stepped forward slowly, positioning himself between the creatures and the mother and child. He raised his hands, palms open, showing that he did not want to fight, but that he would protect those in his care. The predators paused, tilting their heads, studying Milo and the group. The infant's cries began to rise, small but urgent. Milo kept his voice steady, speaking softly, humming a calm tune. He could feel the tension in the air, the predator's curiosity, and the child's fear. All three needed him to remain calm. Milo quickly scanned the clearing. There were thick vines, rocks, and fallen branches he could use to create barriers. He grabbed a long vine, swinging it slowly in an arc to block one predator's path. The movement startled the creature, but it did not attack. Milo used his device on his wrist, activating a low-frequency pulse that created a shimmering wall of light. The predators hesitated, confused by the unfamiliar display. Sarah stepped slightly forward, shielding her child with her body. Milo placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, signaling calm. The infant clung to its mother, small hands gripping her glowing fingers. Milo spoke softly, telling the child it was safe. Slowly, he moved the shimmering wall of light forward, keeping the predators at a distance. The creatures circled, testing their understanding. They were intelligent, cautious, but also hungry. Milo realized that he needed more than barriers, he needed to use the forest itself to protect the group. He directed his team to use small sound devices to create gentle vibrations across the clearing, confusing the predators without causing panic. The combination of light, sound, and calm human presence created a protective zone around Sarah and her child. The infant's cries lessened as Milo continued to hum and make slow, deliberate gestures. The child was watching him carefully, learning that Milo's presence meant safety. Sarah mirrored his calm movements, letting her glowing patterns flow steadily. The predators began to hesitate, unsure of how to proceed. Milo noticed that one of the creatures moved closer, curious, but wary of the strange display of light and vibration. Milo slowly knelt, extending his hand toward the creature in a non-threatening way. He wanted to show that humans could control their strength without harming others. The creature sniffed the air, cautious but not aggressive. Milo's calm energy, combined with the synchronized signals of Sarah and the infant, seemed to confuse the predators further. After several tense minutes, the predators decided the clearing was too strange and too risky. They turned and disappeared back into the forest, their glowing eyes fading among the trees. Milo exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. Sarah's glowing patterns shifted to warmer tones, signaling calm. The infant relaxed in her arms, no longer crying. Milo allowed himself a small smile, feeling pride and relief. "Good work," Milo whispered to his team. They had managed the danger without firing a single weapon. The balance of calm, light, and careful strategy had saved the infant and mother. Milo realized that sometimes true strength came not from force, but from thinking, patience, and understanding the needs of others. Sarah stepped forward, placing her hand near Milo's. Her glowing patterns communicated gratitude and respect. The infant reached out toward him, touching his fingers lightly, and Milo returned the gesture gently. The connection between human and Avara was growing stronger, even under the stress of danger. Milo took a moment to observe the forest. He noticed small details he had not seen before, tiny glowing insects that moved rhythmically, leaves that shimmered as if reacting to the group's energy, and the way the sunlight reflected off crystal branches. The forest was alive, aware, and Milo knew that every action they took could affect the balance of this world. The rest of the day passed with careful interactions. Milo helped Sarah teach the infant simple gestures and patterns, using the forest as a safe space for learning and exploration. The infant's curiosity grew, and its small hands reached for light, leaves, and Milo's fingers. Sarah's glow reflected approval, guiding the child without words. Milo mirrored her gestures, strengthening the bond between human and Avara. By evening, the forest had returned to calm. The predators were gone, and the glowing plants reflected the soft light of Viera's moons. Milo helped Sarah settle the infant in a resting area. The child curled against its mother, breathing slowly and comfortably. Milo knelt beside them, speaking softly and humming. The connection between them was strong, a fragile but real trust that had survived the first serious threat. Milo understood that danger would return at some point. The forest was full of life, and not all of it would be friendly. But for now, he had proven that humans could be protectors, not just fighters. He had kept the child safe through strategy, calm presence, and understanding of the forest and its creatures. Sarah's glowing patterns shifted through gentle waves, signaling peace and trust. The infant reached toward Milo one last time before closing its eyes for the night. Milo smiled, feeling the warmth of this connection. The day had tested him, but it had also shown him that courage could be gentle, and strength could be measured by care and wisdom. As night settled over the glowing forest, Milo looked at the mother and child. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he also knew that trust had been built that could withstand danger. Humans could be allies, friends, and protectors in a universe that was often unpredictable. In the quiet of the forest, Milo felt a deep sense of purpose. He had faced fear, protected the innocent, and built a connection across species. This was what heroism truly meant on Viera: patience, understanding, and the courage to act with care when the stakes were highest. The night passed peacefully, but Milo remained alert. The forest was alive, full of wonders and hidden dangers. He knew that the next step in building trust with Sarah and her child would require even more patience, understanding, and courage. For now, though, they had survived the threat together, and the bond between human and Avery had grown stronger than ever. The next day dawned bright and clear over the glowing forest of Viera. Milo awoke early, stretching and taking in the serene beauty of the alien world. Golden light passed through the crystal trees, casting shimmering patterns across the ground. The forest was alive with the sound of small creatures moving among the branches and the gentle hum of glowing plants. Milo felt the familiar mix of awe and responsibility. He had learned that this world demanded respect and attention, not force. Sarah was already awake, gently cradling her infant in her arms. The child's tiny eyes blinked at the light, curious but calm. Milo knelt beside them, offering a soft smile. The infant reached toward him, and Milo held out his hand gently. The small fingers curled around his, a gesture of trust that filled Milo with quiet satisfaction. He realized that this bond, though fragile, was stronger than any physical protection or training he could provide. "Good morning," Milo whispered softly, humming a calm tune. He knew the infant could not understand words, but the tone, the rhythm, and the gentle vibration conveyed comfort. The child cooed in response, stretching its tiny arms toward him. Milo held its hands lightly, letting it explore his touch while Sarah watched closely, her glowing patterns soft and warm. The morning passed with quiet learning. Milo observed how the child responded to light, sound, and gestures. He noticed the subtle shifts in Sarah's glow, each color and pattern indicating emotion, intent, or instruction. By mimicking her movements, Milo could communicate with both mother and child, forming a silent language of trust and care. Each small gesture, each coo, and each response built a bridge between species. During a break, Milo and Sarah sat side by side. He extended his hand, and she mirrored the gesture, a simple act of mutual understanding. The infant played with their fingers, laughing softly, tiny fingers exploring both human and Avery hands. Milo marveled at the moment. Trust had been earned through patience and calm presence. Strength alone could never have created this connection. Suddenly, a soft rustling came from the trees nearby. Milo stiffened instinctively, scanning the forest. It was not the predators from before, but smaller, curious creatures observing from a distance. Milo remained calm, kneeling, and keeping his gestures slow. The infant noticed the movement but did not cry. Sara's glowing patterns communicated caution, but also trust in Milo's calm presence. Milo extended a hand slowly, letting the creatures see he meant no harm. The small beings approached cautiously, sniffing the air and observing the unusual group. Milo spoke softly, humming again, letting his energy convey safety. Sara mirrored his calm movements, and the infant watched intently, learning from both of them. The creatures eventually moved closer, curious but unafraid. Milo realized that the calm presence of humans could influence the forest itself, creating harmony instead of fear. As the day progressed, Milo began to teach the infant simple interactions. He used gestures, sounds, and gentle touches to show the child how to respond to its environment. Sara watched, her glowing patterns shifting to warm, approving tones. Milo noticed that the child began to anticipate movements, learning from him and the mother. Trust and understanding were growing in ways he had never experienced before. By mid-afternoon, Milo took a moment to reflect. Humans often believed that power was measured by weapons and strength. Here, on Viera, he had learned that courage could also be patience, understanding, and gentle guidance. The bond he had built with Sara and her child was not about dominance, but about mutual respect and care. Suddenly, the infant reached for a small glowing plant nearby. Milo guided its tiny hands gently, letting it explore without fear. Sara's glow shifted to bright green, signaling approval. The child cooed, delighted by the new texture and light. Milo smiled, realizing that learning could be playful, safe, and full of wonder. Later, Milo noticed a shift in Sara's behavior. She stepped closer to him, extending her hand in a gesture of trust. Milo mirrored the movement, and the infant watched, cooing and reaching for both of them. It was a silent ceremony of respect, a recognition that Milo was more than a protector, he was a partner in care and understanding. The forest seemed to respond to this growing harmony. Small creatures ventured closer, plants glowed brighter, and the air felt lighter. Milo realized that trust could influence more than just individuals, it could affect the energy of an entire ecosystem. His actions, calm and careful, were creating a ripple of safety and cooperation. As evening approached, Milo and Sara settled in a small clearing. The infant rested between them, safe and content. Milo hummed a gentle tune, matching the rhythm of the mother's glowing patterns. The child responded with soft coos, tiny hands exploring the space between them. Milo felt a deep sense of purpose. Humans could build bridges, foster trust, and create understanding in ways that technology alone could not. Suddenly, the forest shifted slightly. Milo stood, alert and ready. Sara's glow brightened, signaling caution. But this time, there was no immediate danger. The infant's curiosity drew it to small creatures that had emerged to observe. Milo allowed the child to reach out under careful supervision. The creatures were curious, but calm, sensing the trust between the human and Avara family. Milo smiled quietly, realizing that the day's lessons extended beyond the child. The forest itself was learning to trust them. Night fell over the forest, and the twin moons rose, casting soft light across the trees. Milo helped Sara settle the infant, keeping its tiny hands safe in hers. The mother's glowing patterns reflected peace and trust, and Milo felt a quiet pride. They had survived threats, built understanding, and created a bond that spanned species. Before resting himself, Milo looked around the forest. The creatures, the glowing plants, and even the distant mountains seemed to radiate calm energy. He realized that his actions mattered here in ways beyond immediate survival. By showing care, patience, and respect, humans could influence this world positively, not just as visitors, but as allies and partners. Milo knelt beside Sarah and the child, speaking softly and humming a calm tune. The infant curled against its mother, tiny fingers brushing Milo's hand in a gesture of trust. The mother's glowing skin shifted gently, signaling approval and gratitude. Milo understood that mutual respect had been established. It was a quiet, fragile harmony, but it was real and powerful. As he settled for the night, Milo thought about the future. There would be challenges, dangers, and tests of trust. But he had learned that humans could offer more than strength, they could offer understanding, empathy, and partnership. In the glowing forests of Viera, Milo had discovered that courage was not only in action, but also in care. The forest was calm now, filled with soft sounds of life. Milo lay nearby, alert but at peace. Sarah and the infant rested, safe under his watch. Tomorrow would bring new lessons, new interactions, and perhaps new challenges. But for now, mutual respect had been established, and that was the foundation of everything that would follow. Milo closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the quiet satisfaction of trust earned. He had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and through patience and understanding, he had built a bond that transcended species. This was what heroism meant on Viera: courage guided by empathy, strength guided by care, and the willingness to connect even across the greatest differences. And so, in the glowing forest, human and avarice shared a quiet night of peace, trust, and understanding. It was a fragile harmony, but one that would grow stronger with each day, each gesture, and each act of care. Milo knew that the bonds formed today could change the future, not only for the child and the mother but for all humans who would come to Viera in peace. The sun rose gently over the forest of Viera, painting the crystal trees in warm gold and violet. Milo woke early, stretching and taking in the beauty of the world around him. Today felt different. There was a calm energy in the air, a quiet promise that their bond, human, Avara mother, and child, was stronger than any challenge that might appear. Milo felt the weight of responsibility, but also hope. Sarah was already awake, holding her child close. The infant blinked at the light, small eyes reflecting both curiosity and trust. Milo knelt beside them, extending his hand slowly. The child reached for him, fingers curling around his in a gentle grip. Milo smiled, feeling the warmth of connection that had grown over days of careful attention. "Good morning," Milo whispered softly, humming a calm tune. The infant cooed in response, tiny sounds of comfort and recognition. Sarah's glowing patterns shifted in warm shades of blue and green, signaling trust and calm. Milo realized that this day would mark a turning point not just in their relationship, but in the way humans and Avara could interact in the future. The team gathered nearby, preparing for a small exploration. Milo had decided that today they would learn more about the forest, its creatures, and how the Avara family interacted with their world. He wanted to show that humans could be partners, not intruders. Sarah watched closely, the infant resting safely against her chest. Milo knew that trust had to remain steady, even as new experiences arose. As they moved through the forest, Milo kept the child's comfort in mind. He mirrored Sarah's gestures, letting the infant observe the harmony between human and mother. The child reached toward glowing plants, and Milo guided its tiny hands gently, letting it explore safely. The Avara mother's glowing patterns shifted in approval, and Milo felt a quiet pride. This was not about strength or weapons, it was about understanding, patience, and care. Suddenly, a rustle came from the trees. Milo froze, scanning the area carefully. It was not the predators they had encountered before, but a group of smaller creatures, curious and cautious. The infant stirred, sensing the movement. Sura's glow shifted slightly, signaling alertness. Milo raised his hand slowly, showing calm and reassurance. The creatures paused, observing the group. Milo remained still, letting them assess the situation. The forest seemed alive in response. Birds with shimmering feathers circled above, small glowing insects moved through the air, and even the plants seemed to pulse softly. Milo realized that trust had extended beyond the family, they had influenced the energy of the forest itself. The creatures eventually moved closer, no longer fearful, as if recognizing that the human and Avarice shared a bond of respect and care. Milo knelt beside Sura and the infant, letting the child explore the environment under careful supervision. Tiny fingers reached for leaves, light, and Milo's hands. Sura mirrored his gestures, guiding the infant with gentle touches and glowing patterns. The child laughed softly, the sound a mixture of delight and recognition. Milo understood that trust could grow through shared experiences, not just protection. Hours passed in quiet learning. Milo observed the infant's curiosity and Sura's guidance, noting patterns and responses. Each gesture, each coo, each interaction strengthened the bond. The forest remained calm, watching silently as human and Avarice communicated through touch, light, and gentle motion. Milo felt a sense of accomplishment. He had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and had built something stronger than any physical defense, a connection based on care and understanding. As the sun reached its peak, Milo noticed movement in the distance. A small group of Avarice approached, curious about the infant and the human presence. Sura stood, her glowing patterns signaling both pride and caution. Milo stayed calm, letting Sura guide the interaction. The approaching Avarice observed quietly, their glowing patterns shifting with curiosity and interest. Milo realized that his actions over the past days had created more than trust with Sura and her child, they had begun to influence the wider community. The infant reached toward the new Avarice, giggling softly. Milo mirrored Sura's gestures, letting the child explore safely. The visiting Avarice responded with gentle patterns of light, acknowledging the human's presence without fear. Milo felt a deep sense of hope. This was more than a moment of trust, it was the beginning of understanding between species, built on care, patience, and courage. Later in the afternoon, Milo, Sura, and the infant rested near a crystal stream. Milo watched the water shimmer under the sunlight, reflecting the calm energy of the forest. He spoke softly to Sura, using slow gestures and tones, and she responded with her musical language and glowing patterns. The infant cooed and reached for Milo, tiny hands exploring his fingers. Milo realized that this day would be remembered not for danger or conflict, but for connection and understanding. The forest remained peaceful, but Milo knew that challenges could return. Yet he also knew that the trust they had built would help them face anything. The infant had learned that humans could be gentle and protective. Sura had learned that humans could be allies, capable of understanding and respect. Milo himself had learned the value of patience, empathy, and courage guided by care. As evening fell, Milo helped Sura settle the infant in a resting area. The mother's glowing skin shifted through calm patterns, signaling comfort and trust. Milo knelt beside them, humming a soft tune. The infant curled against Sura, tiny hands brushing Milo's in a gesture of recognition. Milo smiled, realizing that this fragile harmony was now strong enough to face the future. Under the twin moons of Viera, the forest glowed softly. Milo watched the mother and child, feeling pride and purpose. He had proven that humans could create bonds across species, protect the innocent without violence, and bring understanding to a world that had never known them. This was the essence of heroism on Viera, not power, but patience, care, and empathy. The infant reached toward Milo one last time before closing its eyes for the night. Sarah held the child close, her glowing patterns gentle and steady. Milo stayed nearby, alert but peaceful, knowing that trust had been earned and maintained. He reflected on the journey that had begun with a cry in the forest and had grown into a bond that could shape the future.